welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Weather log number 37 Morgan Fletcher, Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. There's something wrong with the clouds. I've been charting weather patterns in Millfield County for 7 years now. Not professionally, I work at the hardware store in town, but I've always had a fascination with meteorology. My little weather station behind the house isn't fancy, but it's accurate. And what it's telling me about this storm system doesn't make sense. It's been hovering over our region for 3 days now. Stationary. The moisture levels and pressure readings are constantly fluctuating, but the cloud mass itself isn't moving with the jet stream like it should. The National Weather Service keeps predicting it will drift east by evening, but morning comes and it's still there, spreading across the sky like a bruise. This morning I woke up to find the barometric readings had dropped to levels I've never recorded before. The air feels heavy, like just before a massive thunderstorm, but there's been almost no precipitation. Just that low, constant rumble of thunder that never quite breaks. Something else bothers me: the formation. Cloud structures follow certain patterns based on atmospheric conditions, but there's a section in the northwest quadrant that looks deliberate, like someone arranged the cumulus towers in a perfect circle, with spiraling wisps reaching outward. I've been taking photos every hour to track it. Mrs. Abernathy at the post office says we should expect the power to go out tonight. She's been alive for 80-some years and claims she can smell when a bad storm is coming. But this isn't like other storms. It's waiting for something. I was in the middle of checking the wind speed when every device in my house went crazy at once. My phone, the old emergency radio on the counter, even the weather alert system on my computer, all blaring that harsh, grating tone that makes your skin crawl. The automated voice was familiar enough. The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for Millfield County until 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But then the signal deteriorated. Static crept in, and beneath the standard message, I swear I heard something else. A rhythmic pattern, almost like Morse code, but not quite. 3 pulses, pause, 5 pulses, pause, 3 again. I tried to record it, but by the time I got my phone ready, the broadcast had returned to normal. Just the usual list of precautions: secure outdoor furniture, stay indoors, avoid windows. When I called the local radio station to ask about the strange interference, Deb, who works the afternoon shift, said they hadn't noticed anything unusual. Just the standard alert that came through the emergency system, she told me. I tried the National Weather Service next, but all I got was hold music for 20 minutes before giving up. The clouds have been changing all afternoon. That circular pattern I noticed is more pronounced now. The diameter has expanded, and the center has darkened to a deep purple-gray that the setting sun can't penetrate. I've never seen a formation maintain structural integrity like this while expanding. Around 6 p.m., I drove out to Harker's Ridge. It's the highest point in the county, an old fire lookout with a view of the whole valley. I wanted to get a better perspective on the storm system. The road was deserted. Everyone else in town had the good sense to stay inside, I guess. As I climbed the ridge, the radio in my truck started picking up interference. At first, I thought it was just the mountains blocking the signal, but then that same pattern emerged: 3 pulses, pause, 5 pulses, pause, 3 pulses. This time it continued, cycling through the sequence again and again beneath the static. From the lookout point, the view was breathtaking and terrifying. The storm covered everything, a ceiling of churning clouds from horizon to horizon. But that formation I'd spotted from home, it was even more unnatural from this vantage point. The circular pattern had sharp edges that clouds shouldn't be able to maintain, and the way the surrounding clouds rotated around it, like water circling a drain, but nothing was being pulled in. If anything, the formation seemed to be pushing outward, growing. As the sun set behind the mountains, I thought I saw something else. Flickers of light within the cloud mass, not lightning, too regular, too contained. Like someone was turning a flashlight on and off, sending signals. I was about to take a video when a truck pulled up beside mine. Sheriff Dawson stepped out, adjusting his hat against the rising wind. "Morgan," he nodded, frowning at the sky. "Thought that was your truck. Kind of a strange time for sightseeing, wouldn't you say?" "I'm documenting the storm," I explained, gesturing to my camera. "There's something unusual about this system." Sheriff Dawson squinted up at the clouds. "Looks like a storm to me. A bad one at that. You should head home before it breaks." "But don't you see the pattern?" I pointed to the circular formation. "That's not natural. And there's something." The rest of my sentence was drowned out by a massive crack of thunder that seemed to come from directly overhead. Both of us instinctively ducked, though there was nowhere to take cover on the exposed ridge. When I looked up again, a single, fat raindrop hit my forehead. Then another. But it wasn't water. It was too viscous, and it left a faint, luminescent smear on my skin. I wiped it away quickly, feeling a slight tingling sensation where it had touched me. Sheriff Dawson was already retreating to his vehicle. "That's our cue, Fletcher. Get home now. County's probably going to issue evacuation orders if this gets worse." As if on cue, both our phones erupted with the emergency alert sound again. The message was standard: severe weather warning, seek shelter. But as it ended, there was that interference again. This time, Sheriff Dawson heard it too. I could tell by the way his expression changed. "What the hell was that?" he muttered. Before I could answer, every hair on my body stood on end. The air crackled with electricity. We both looked up just in time to see a massive lightning bolt strike the fire lookout tower, not 50 yards from where we stood. The ancient structure splintered, wood and metal flying in all directions. That's when I saw it, just for an instant, illuminated in the blue-white flash. A shape in the clouds directly above us. Not random wisps and vapor, but something with form. Something with depth. Something with eyes. Sheriff Dawson was shouting at me to get in my truck. The rain, if you could call it that, was falling faster now, each drop leaving a momentary glow on whatever it touched. As I pulled away from the ridge, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The circular pattern in the clouds had shifted, rotating to center itself directly over where we had been standing, almost like it was watching us leave. End of weather log number 37. Weather log number 38. Morgan Fletcher, Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. The storm hasn't moved for days now, and it remains fixed overhead like it's anchored to our little town. The local news is calling it an atmospheric anomaly, but that doesn't begin to explain what's happening. I woke at dawn to check my equipment and found everything malfunctioning. The barometer needle had spun completely around and stopped at a reading well below what should be possible at our elevation. The digital thermometer was flashing between temperatures, vacillating between 42 degrees Fahrenheit and -7 degrees Fahrenheit every few seconds. The rain gauge showed accumulation of 0.3 inches, but the collection cylinder was empty. Something luminescent had dried on my front porch steps. Residue from that strange rain yesterday. Under normal light it appeared as a faint silvery film, but when I shined my UV flashlight on it, it glowed an unsettling blue-green. I scraped some into a specimen jar to examine later. The weather radio has been nothing but static all morning, with occasional bursts of that strange rhythmic interference. 353, 353. I've been trying to decode it, but it doesn't match any Morse pattern I'm familiar with. I stopped by Elijah's place on my way to town. He's been my neighbor for the 6 years I've lived here, an old farmer who's weathered more storms than anyone else in the county. If anyone would understand what we're seeing, it's him. His property was unnervingly still when I arrived. No birds, no insects buzzing. Even his old hound Rusty was silent, pressed into the corner of the porch with his tail between his legs. Elijah was on his rocker, staring at the sky. He didn't acknowledge me until I was right beside him. "It's watching," he said without looking at me. "Been watching for a long time." I followed his gaze upward. The circular pattern had evolved overnight, developing concentric rings like ripples in a pond. But these ripples weren't spreading outward. They were pulsing inward, toward that dark center. "What's watching, Elijah? What do you see up there?" He finally turned to me, his weathered face grave. "Not what I see. What sees me. What sees all of us." He pointed a gnarled finger at the clouds. "Patterns coming back. Same as 87. I sat down beside him. "This happened before?" "In 1987, Elijah nodded slowly. "Not as bad. Not as aware. Was just passing through then. Now it's settling in. Taking interest." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. "What is it?" "Don't rightly know, but they do." He gestured toward town. "Government folks arrived this morning. Military vehicles, setting up at the old fire station." That was news to me. "Military? Are you sure?" "Air Force markings. Bunch of equipment. Satellite dishes pointing up." He tapped his temple. "They know what's up there. Been tracking it." Main Street was busier than I expected given the ominous sky overhead. Mrs. Abernathy was right about the power. It had gone out in sections of town overnight. The hardware store where I work was crowded with people buying batteries, flashlights, and emergency supplies. My boss, Frank, was too overwhelmed to be annoyed by my late arrival. "Thank God you're here, Morgan. These people are acting like it's doomsday. It's just a storm, for Christ's sake." I wasn't so sure, but I kept my thoughts to myself and helped where I could. As I was restocking the flashlight display, Sheriff Dawson came in. Our eyes met, and I could tell he was thinking about what we'd seen on the ridge. "Morgan," he said with a nod. "Got a minute?" We stepped outside. The sheriff looked exhausted, deep circles under his eyes. "You tell anyone about what we saw yesterday?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "No one would believe me anyway." "Good." He looked up at the sky, then back to me. "We've got some specialists in town. Air Force weather team. They want to talk to anyone who's been monitoring this system." "You told them about me?" "Had to. They're installing equipment all over the county trying to get readings. Said they heard the same signals we did on the emergency system." He handed me a card. "Major Reeves wants you to call her today." I didn't get a chance to call until my lunch break. Major Diana Reeves answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. "Mr. Fletcher? I understand you have weather monitoring equipment and have been documenting the current atmospheric event." Her tone was clipped, professional. I explained what I'd been observing: the stationary system, the organized patterns, the strange precipitation. "And the emergency broadcasts?" she asked. Sheriff Dawson mentioned interference. "Yes, a rhythmic pattern. 3 pulses, 5 pulses, 3 pulses. It repeats." There was a pause on the line. I heard papers shuffling. "Mr. Fletcher, I'd like to see your data and photographs, and any samples you may have collected. Can you come to our temporary headquarters at the fire station this evening?" Before I could answer, another emergency alert blared from the store's radio. This time, the message was different. "This is an emergency alert from the United States Air Force. All citizens of Millfield County are advised to remain indoors between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. until further notice." This is not a test. When the automated voice finished, instead of returning to regular programming, the broadcast cut to that now familiar static, and beneath it, the 353 pulse pattern, but stronger now, clearer. "Major," I said into the phone. "Are you hearing this?" Her voice was tight. "Yes, Mr. Fletcher, come immediately. Don't wait until evening." The old fire station had been transformed. Military vehicles surrounded it, and soldiers in uniform stood guard at the entrance. Equipment I couldn't identify had been set up on the roof, all pointing skyward. Inside, computers and monitoring stations filled what used to be the garage bay. Major Reeves met me at the door, a tall woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. "Show me your photos," she said without preamble. I handed over my phone and the memory card from my camera. She passed them to a technician, who immediately began transferring the files to their system. On a large monitor, my images of the cloud formation appeared, chronologically arranged. Major Reeves studied them intently. When did you first notice the circular pattern? 3 days ago, but it's evolved since then. This morning, it had concentric rings, she finished for me, moving inward rather than outward. I nodded, surprised. How did you know? Instead of answering, she led me to another screen displaying what looked like weather radar, but the colors and patterns were like nothing I'd seen before. This is happening all over the country, she said quietly.
Identical formation, identical signal.
All appeared within minutes of each other 4 days ago. I stared at the screen, trying to process what she was saying. What are they? Major Reeves' face remained impassive. We don't know yet, but they're organized, deliberate. She pointed to my latest photo. And they're watching us. Watching? How can clouds watch anything? She was about to respond when alarms began to sound throughout the facility. The technicians rushed to their stations. What's happening? I asked, but no one answered me. On the main screen, a live feed showed the storm clouds directly above the town. The circular pattern was changing again. The rings were spinning now, rotating around that dark center like a massive iris. And at the very center, something was opening. It's happening again, Major Reeves said, more to herself than to me. Just like in Colorado, the lights in the station flickered. Emergency alerts blared from every device simultaneously, but this time there was no automated message, only that rhythmic pulse pattern, now so loud it was painful. Through the windows, I could see the sky had darkened to an impossible black directly overhead. The air itself seemed to vibrate with each pulse of sound. And then, for just a moment, a beam of intense light shot down from the center of the formation. A perfect column connecting sky to earth. When it vanished, the emergency alerts went silent. The circular pattern in the clouds began to disperse, returning to a more natural-looking formation. Major Reeves was already barking orders, dispatching teams to find where the light had touched down. What was that? I asked her when she returned to my side. What just happened? Her expression was grim. I think, she said carefully, something just came through. End of weather log number 38. Weather log number 39 Morgan Fletcher. Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. The military has established a perimeter around Farrow's Field, where the light beam touched down last night. From my back porch, I can see their vehicles and the glow of floodlights they've set up, despite the early hour. They're not letting anyone within half a mile of the site. Sheriff Dawson has deputies manning roadblocks on all access points. Major Reeves wouldn't tell me what they found out there. After the event at the fire station, she politely but firmly escorted me out, saying it was now a matter of national security. She kept my memory card but returned my phone after deleting all the cloud formation photos. Thankfully, I had already backed up the images to my home computer. Looking at them now, arranged chronologically, the progression is undeniable. The formation didn't just appear, it developed like something growing, evolving, becoming more defined. The weather has calmed somewhat since yesterday. The strange luminescent rain has stopped, though the clouds remain fixed overhead. The circular pattern has dispersed, as if whatever was watching has retreated deeper into the storm's mass. But I can still make out subtle, organized structures within the larger system. Waiting, I went to see Elijah again this morning. I needed to know more about what he remembered from 1987. He was in his barn when I arrived, rummaging through old boxes. Rusty was still hiding in the house, refusing to come out. Been waiting for you, Elijah said without looking up. Knew you'd be back after what happened yesterday. You saw it? The light, saw it, felt it. He tapped his chest. In here, like being looked at by something you ain't meant to see. He finally found what he was searching for. An old leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. He opened it carefully and handed it to me. The journal contained meticulous weather observations, not unlike my own logs. But interspersed between barometric readings and temperature charts were detailed sketches of cloud formations. One page in particular caught my eye, a drawing dated September 15, 1987, showing a circular pattern nearly identical to what I'd photographed. 3 days it stayed, Elijah said, pointing to subsequent entries. Same signals on the radio, same light. Then it moved on. He turned a few more pages to a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Mystery Illness Strikes County. 12 Hospitalized. What happened to them?" I asked. Elijah's weathered face grew somber. Changed. Started talking nonsense. Seeing things that weren't there. Drawing the same patterns over and over. He took the journal back, turning to the final pages. My rose was one of them. The last few entries were written in a different hand. More frantic, less organized. The pages were filled with the same circular pattern, drawn compulsively, along with strings of numbers. 353, 353, 353. She never came back. Not really. Elijah closed the journal gently. Her body came home, but whatever made her rose stayed up there. He pointed skyward. With them. I felt a chill despite the warm morning. You think there's something intelligent in the clouds? Elijah looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse. Not in the clouds, boy. The clouds are just where they watch from. Their window into our world. He pointed to the journal. Rose used to say they were counting us. Cataloging. Like we was bugs in a collection. On my way back from Elijah's, I drove past the old fire station. The military presence had doubled since yesterday. New equipment was being unloaded from trucks with government plates, satellite dishes, antenna arrays, and what looked like microwave transmitters. I slowed down to get a better look and immediately regretted it. A soldier stepped into the road, waving me down. I recognized Major Reeves approaching from the compound as I rolled down my window. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. "Twice in 2 days. People will talk. Just passing by," I said, trying to sound casual. "Lot of equipment you're bringing in." She glanced back at the unloading operation. Standard weather monitoring gear. We both knew it was a lie. Those weren't weather instruments, at least not any I'd ever seen. "Have you made any progress?" I asked. "With what happened at Farrow's Field?" Major Reeves studied me for a moment. "Actually, I was going to contact you today. We found something you might be able to help us interpret." She checked her watch. "If you have time now?" Curiosity overrode my caution. I parked my truck and followed her into the compound. Inside, the operation had expanded significantly. Where yesterday there had been a dozen technicians, now there were at least 50 personnel, all focused intently on their stations. On the main display, multiple radar feeds showed the storm system from different angles. The circular pattern was gone, but the entire mass pulsed with an unnatural regularity. Major Reeves led me to a separate room where a team was analyzing soil samples. On a central table sat a clear container holding what looked like black sand. "This was at the impact site," she explained. "It wasn't there before yesterday's event." I leaned in for a closer look. It wasn't sand but tiny glass-like particles, so dark they seemed to absorb the light around them. "What is it?" "We don't know. It doesn't match any known mineral composition." She pointed to a microscope. "Take a look." Through the eyepiece, I could see that each particle wasn't a solid mass but a complex structure, almost crystalline, with internal geometries that shifted as I watched, reconfiguring themselves into new patterns. "They're moving," I said, pulling back from the microscope in shock. "Yes." Major Reeves' voice was grim. "And they're emitting the same signal pattern we've been detecting from the clouds." Before I could process this information, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The overhead lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency backups. "Status report." Major Reeves barked into her radio. A panicked voice responded, "Major, you need to see this. The formation is back. And the radio cut to static, and beneath it, that familiar pulse pattern. 353. 353. We rushed back to the main room. On the emergency monitors, the storm had changed dramatically. The circular pattern had not only returned but multiplied. Dozens of identical formations now dotted the clouds above Millfield County, each one a perfect replica of the original. "It's watching us," I whispered, echoing Elijah's words. As if in response, every screen in the facility suddenly displayed the same image. A perfect reproduction of the circular pattern, its concentric rings pulsing inward towards that dark center. And within that center, unmistakably, was the shape of an eye. Every phone, radio, and speaker erupted with the emergency alert tone, but the automated voice had changed. It spoke in stuttering, fragmented English, as if something was learning to use our language in real time. "Attention. We see. We count. Prepare for examination." Major Reeves was shouting orders, but her voice was drowned out as the message repeated, growing louder with each iteration. The black particles in the container had begun to vibrate, jumping and swirling like iron filings around a magnet. Through the windows, I could see that the sky had darkened again, but not with night or storm clouds. Something vast was blocking the sun. Something immense enough to cast the entire town into shadow. The last thing I remember before the power failed completely was Major Reeves grabbing my arm, her face illuminated by the red emergency lights as she said words I'll never forget. "They're not just watching anymore, Fletcher. They're coming through." End of weather log number 39. Weather log number 40. Morgan Fletcher, Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. Recorded on backup generator power. The power grid across Millfield County has been down for 18 hours now. Electrical crews claim it's storm damage, but there's been no lightning, no wind, nothing that could explain every transformer in a 30-mile radius failing simultaneously. I made it home yesterday after the blackout at the military compound. Major Reeves instructed everyone to return to their homes and remain indoors until further notice. The streets were chaos. Traffic lights dead, people panicking, the county emergency siren wailing until it, too, went silent. My weather equipment is running on battery backup. The readings make no sense. The barometer shows pressure fluctuations that should be tearing buildings apart, yet the air is eerily still. Temperature sensors swing wildly between extremes. The rain gauge registered precipitation at one point, but when I checked the collection basin, it was bone dry. Most disturbing of all, my camera, set to take time-lapse photos of the sky, has captured something impossible. In frame after frame, the circular formations in the clouds appear to be blinking, opening and closing, like eyes. Sheriff Dawson came by this morning. He looked haggard, his uniform rumpled, radio squawking constantly with reports from across the county. "Thought you should know," he said, standing awkwardly on my porch, refusing to come inside. "We've got people missing. 12 so far." The number sent a chill through me. 12? The same as in 87. He frowned. "What about 87? I told him about Elijah's journal, about the 12 people who fell ill after the last visitation. Sheriff Dawson listened, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Where were they last seen?" I asked when I finished. "That's the thing," he said, lowering his voice despite no one being nearby to hear. "All of them were last seen looking up at the sky, just staring, then walking off. Witnesses say they looked peaceful, like they were in some kind of trance." "Have you spoken with Major Reeves about this?" His face darkened. "Military's gone silent. Whole compounds locked down tight. No one in or out since yesterday." He hesitated, then added, "Listen, Morgan, there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone yet." From his pocket, he produced a small evidence bag containing what looked like black sand, identical to what I'd seen in the military lab. "This is spreading. Found patches of it all over town. Always in perfect circles, always directly under one of those." He gestured skyward. "Eye things. Have you touched it?" I asked, remembering how the particles had moved in the container. He shook his head. No, but Johnson did. Rookie deputy. He's one of the 12 who's missing now. As if on cue, both our phones emitted the harsh tone of an emergency alert. The message was short, but unmistakably not from any government agency. Examination proceeds. Remain visible. Sheriff Dawson stared at his phone. What the hell does that mean? Before I could answer, the sky darkened as if a switch had been flipped. We both looked up. The clouds directly overhead had formed into a perfect spiral, rotating slowly around a central point of absolute blackness. And from that point, a beam of light, not bright like yesterday's, but a deep, pulsing purple, descended into my backyard. When it receded seconds later, it left behind a perfect circle of that black, crystalline substance. Sheriff Dawson was already backing toward his cruiser. I need to call this in, he said, though who he could call was unclear. Stay inside, Morgan. Lock your doors. As he drove away, I noticed something odd about the circle of black particles. They were arranging themselves, forming patterns that looked disturbingly like written characters. Not in any alphabet I recognized, but clearly deliberate. Communicating. I called Elijah immediately after the sheriff left, but got no answer. Concerned, I decided to risk the short walk to his property. The world outside felt wrong. The air had a metallic taste, and sounds were muffled, as if passing through water. The sky above was a tapestry of watching eyes, each one trained on the town below. I found Elijah's front door standing open, Rusty whimpering on the porch. Inside, the house was empty but not abandoned. On the kitchen table lay his journal, open to a fresh page. In the same frantic handwriting I'd seen in Rose's final entries, new text had been added. They are the observers. They watch through the windows between worlds. They record. They collect. They have been watching us for millennia, but now they take interest in our patterns, our behaviors, our responses to stimuli. We are specimens to them. They have no malice, but they have no mercy either. Beneath this was a sequence of numbers, repeated over and over. 353. They see. 353. They count. 353. They collect. I was photographing the journal when a sound from the barn caught my attention. A rhythmic tapping, like someone sending a signal. Cautiously, I made my way across the yard. The barn door hung partially open. Inside, the space was dark except for a pool of unnatural purple light falling through a hole in the roof. Standing directly in this light was Elijah, his face upturned, eyes wide and unblinking. Elijah! I called softly. He didn't respond, didn't appear to hear me at all. His right hand was tapping against his thigh, 3 taps, 5 taps, 3 taps, endlessly repeating. As I moved closer, I could see his eyes were completely black, reflecting no light. His skin had a silvery sheen, like it was covered in microscopic versions of those crystalline particles. Catalog entry, human specimen 7 of 12, he said suddenly, his voice flat and mechanical. Rural dwelling, advanced age, demonstrates memory of previous observation period. Suitable for extended study. The voice was Elijah's, but the cadence and vocabulary were completely wrong, like something else speaking through him. Elijah, it's Morgan. Can you hear me? His head snapped toward me with unnatural speed. Those black eyes fixed on mine, and for a moment, I felt a vertigo so intense I had to grab a support beam to stay upright. It was as if I was suddenly suspended high above the earth, looking down through clouds at my own insignificant form. Secondary subject detected. Elijah's voice continued. Designation, Morgan Fletcher. Status, observer of observers. Priority marked for collection. I backed away, but his hand shot out, gripping my wrist with impossible strength. His touch was cold, and I felt a tingling sensation spreading up my arm, the same feeling I'd experienced when that strange rain had touched my skin on Harker's Ridge. You see us, Elijah said, his face inches from mine. Few of your kind truly look upward. Do you notice the patterns? You have been watching us watch you. This makes you valuable. With my free hand, I fumbled for my phone and somehow managed to trigger the camera flash. The burst of light seemed to disorient whatever was controlling Elijah. His grip loosened momentarily, and I wrenched free, stumbling backward toward the door. Behind Elijah, the purple light intensified. The air shimmered, and for a split second, I glimpsed something within the beam. A shape both massive and impossible, like an architecture that shouldn't exist in our 3 dimensions. Every electronic device I had began blaring emergency alerts simultaneously. Subject Morgan Fletcher. Prepare for collection. I ran. Out of the barn, across the yard, down the road toward town. Behind me, I could hear Elijah's voice calling out in that flat, mechanical tone. Futile evasion behavior noted. Predictable response pattern. Collection will proceed. Above, the watching eyes in the clouds tracked my movement, their circular patterns rotating faster as they followed me. Ahead, the town of Millfield lay silent beneath their gaze. Emergency vehicles abandoned in the streets, doors standing open as if people had simply walked away. And all around, spreading across lawns and streets and fields, were perfect circles of that black, crystalline substance. Hundreds of them now, like marks on a map, were targets precisely placed. End of weather log number 40. Weather log number 41, Morgan Fletcher, Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. Recorded on handheld device. Battery at 47%. I've barricaded myself in the basement of the Millfield County Library. It's one of the few buildings in town with a generator still functioning, though the fuel won't last much longer. The internet is down, cell service is spotty at best, but I need to document what's happening while I still can. The town is increasingly empty. I passed dozens of abandoned cars on my way here, some with doors flung open, engines still running. The few people I did see were like Elijah, standing motionless, faces tilted skyward, that same silvery sheen to their skin. I tried calling to one, Mrs. Abernathy from the post office, but she just repeated, "Prepare for collection," in that same flat, mechanical voice. Sheriff Dawson and his remaining deputies have established a makeshift command center at the high school. I stopped there before coming to the library. They've gathered about 30 townspeople, those who had the sense to stay indoors and away from the purple light beams. Everyone is scared, confused. The sheriff has no answers for them. Military's still not responding, he told me privately. County emergency management is offline. It's like we've been cut off from the outside world. What about the missing people? I asked. His expression darkened. Up to 27 now, all showing the same behavior before they disappear. Staring at the sky, then walking off like they're being called somewhere. They're being collected, I said, thinking of Elijah's words. Studied. Sheriff Dawson didn't argue. He'd seen too much in the past 2 days to dismiss anything. We need to warn people to stay inside, away from windows, not to look directly at those things in the clouds. The observers, I muttered. What? That's what Elijah called them. The observers. They watch through windows between worlds. Even as I said it, an emergency alert blared from the school's PA system. Observation phase complete. Collection phase accelerating. Remain visible. The library basement houses the town's historical archives. If this has happened before, beyond what Elijah remembered from 1987, there might be records. I've been searching through old newspapers, town council minutes, weather reports, anything that might give us a clue about what these entities want and how to stop them. I found something in a journal from 1879. A local minister described a great darkness that settled over the town for 3 days. He wrote of eyes in the heavens and 12 souls taken into the firmament. The account ends abruptly, the remaining pages torn out. A county almanac from 1736 mentions a similar event. A stationary storm that watched the townsfolk with malice and spoke through the thunder in tongues not of this earth. Again, 12 people vanished. It's a cycle. Roughly every 70 to 90 years, they return. They observe. They collect. But why is it different this time? Why are they taking more than 12? And why the messages through our emergency alert system? As I was digging through the archives, my phone lit up with an incoming call. The number was blocked, but I answered anyway, desperate for any connection to the outside world. Morgan Fletcher. It was Major Reeves, her voice tight with urgency. Are you somewhere secure? I'm in the library basement. What's happening at the compound? The sheriff said. Listen carefully. She cut me off. I don't have much time. What we're dealing with, it's not the first contact. The government has known about these entities since at least the 1950s. They appear at regular intervals, always over small, isolated communities. Always following the same pattern. The observation and collection, I said. Yes, but this time is different. The pattern has changed. They're communicating directly now, using our own technology against us. And they're taking more people. Why? We think. Static interrupted her for a moment. Frequency of the emergency alert system. Something about that specific tone, that pattern. It mimics their own communication method. When we started using the 3-tone alert system nationwide in the 1960s, we inadvertently created a beacon. We've been calling to them. The realization hit me. The pulses. 353. It's the same pattern as the emergency alert system. Exactly. Each time we broadcast an alert, we strengthen the connection between our world and theirs. We've been inviting them in for decades. More static. Fletcher, you need to. The call cut off. I tried calling back, but couldn't get through. I ventured upstairs briefly to check the sky through the library's skylight. The cloud formations have changed again. The circular eyes have merged into one massive spiral spanning the entire visible sky. At its center is a void so dark it seems to pull at the very light around it. The black crystalline substance is spreading rapidly now. From my vantage point, I can see it covering the town square, creeping up building walls, forming complex geometric patterns that seem to pulse with an internal rhythm. As I watched, a group of people emerged from various buildings. More of the entranced like Elijah. They moved in perfect unison, gathering in the town square directly beneath the central void in the clouds. There must have been 50 of them, standing in concentric circles, faces upturned. A beam of purple light, larger than any before, descended upon them. When it receded moments later, they were gone. No trace remained, not even the black crystalline substance. They had been collected. I returned to the basement to find my phone receiving a string of text messages, all from unknown numbers, all containing variations of the same message. They see through us now. We are their windows. One number I recognized, Sheriff Dawson's. His message was different. Coming for you next. Hide. Don't look up. They know you're watching them. Minutes later, the library's power failed as the generator finally ran out of fuel. In the sudden darkness, I heard the front doors upstairs burst open. Heavy footsteps moved through the building. Too many to be a single person. Through the basement ceiling, I could make out voices speaking in unison, with that same mechanical cadence. Morgan Fletcher, the observer of observers. Priority collection target acquired. My phone lit up with an emergency alert. Subject located. Resistance noted. Unique specimen. I switched off my phone, plunging the basement into total darkness. The footsteps above continued, methodically searching each room. Then another sound reached me. A vehicle outside, engine roaring, followed by shouting. Gunshots, breaking glass. The basement door flew open, and I pressed myself into the darkest corner, holding my breath. Fletcher. A beam of flashlight cut through the darkness. Morgan Fletcher. It was Major Reeves. Behind her, I could make out soldiers in tactical gear, weapons raised. We need to move. Now, they've targeted you specifically. She helped me to my feet. You've been watching them too closely, documenting them. They've taken an interest. What about the others? The town? Sheriff Dawson. Her expression was grim. Dawson's been compromised. Most of the town too. We're evacuating who we can, but She didn't finish the thought. As she led me up the stairs, I glimpsed the library's main floor. The black crystalline substance had spread inside, covering the walls, forming into those same unreadable symbols I'd seen in Elijah's yard. Outside, military vehicles waited, engines running. The sky above was a churning mass of darkness, the central void growing wider. "Don't look up," Major Reeves warned, pulling me toward the nearest vehicle. "No matter what you hear, no matter what calls to you, don't look up." From all around us, emergency alerts blared from abandoned phones, car radios, building PA systems, all repeating the same message. "Observer Fletcher, your collection is inevitable. Your documentation will continue from within." As we drove away from the library, I made the mistake of glancing in the side mirror. Behind us, a column of purple light engulfed the building we had just left. And within that light, I caught a glimpse of something descending. A form both vast and minute, a geometry that hurt to perceive. Something from beyond the storm clouds, finally stepping fully into our world. End of Weather Log number 41. Weather Log number 42. Morgan Fletcher, Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. Recorded on military-issued device. Battery at 96%. I don't know how long we've been driving. Hours, maybe. The military convoy moves with practiced precision, avoiding main roads, cutting through farmland when necessary. 5 vehicles in total, 3 armored personnel carriers, a communications truck bristling with antennas, and the modified Humvee I'm in with Major Reeves. There are 14 soldiers that I've counted, all wearing expressions as dark as the sky above us. We're not fleeing anymore. That became clear when we circled back toward Millfield County about an hour ago, keeping to the outskirts, maintaining what Major Reeves calls optimal observational distance. "They're watching us watch them," she explained when I questioned our return. "And we need to understand what they're doing with the collected individuals." The Major has been more forthcoming since our escape from the library. Perhaps because there's no point in secrecy anymore. The situation has escalated beyond containment protocols. "In previous cycles, they've never taken more than 12 people," she said, eyes fixed on the tablet displaying real-time satellite imagery. "Always 12. Always returned within 72 hours, with no memory of what happened to them. But this time, 87 confirmed collections as of 30 minutes ago. No returns." She swiped through thermal imaging of the town center. "And they're becoming more directional." The images showed tendrils of the storm clouds, dark, sinuous formations, reaching down toward specific buildings. The town hall, the police station, the water treatment plant, the electrical substation, infrastructure, control points. "They're mapping our systems," I realized. "Learning how we function." Major Reeves nodded grimly. "Not just observing anymore. Interacting, testing." As we positioned ourselves on a ridge overlooking the eastern edge of town, I saw it with my own eyes. The clouds had developed a structure now, a central mass with extending filaments, like a macabre jellyfish suspended in the sky. Each tendril terminated in a bulbous formation that pulsed with purple-black light as it lowered toward its target. One such tendril descended upon the county water tower, enveloping the structure completely. When it retracted minutes later, the water tower remained intact but was now coated in the crystalline black substance, geometric patterns swirling across its surface like living circuitry. "Jesus," whispered the soldier manning the surveillance equipment beside me. "It's rewiring our infrastructure." "Not rewiring," Major Reeves corrected. "Repurposing." As if to confirm her assessment, every emergency siren in town activated simultaneously. But instead of the standard warning tone, they emitted a modulating 3-tone pattern: 3 pulses, 5 pulses, 3 pulses. The same pattern we'd observed in the cloud formations. The same pattern as our emergency alert system. They weren't just using our technology. They were speaking through it. Our communications specialist called Major Reeves over to his station. "Ma'am, we're picking up transmissions from the transform structures. all broadcasting on emergency frequencies. "What's the message?" she asked. "It's coordinates, ma'am. GPS locations. Dozens of them all across the country." A chill ran through me. "Other storm systems?" The major's expression confirmed my fear. "They're not just here. This is happening everywhere those clouds have appeared." As night fell, the situation deteriorated rapidly. 3 more military vehicles arrived, bringing additional personnel and equipment. They established a perimeter around our observation post, complete with mounted spotlights pointed downward, never up at the sky. The tendrils continued their methodical descent upon the town, targeting increasingly specific locations. The high school where Sheriff Dawson had established his command center, the cell phone tower on the outskirts, the radio station building. "They're eliminating communication channels," observed a lieutenant whose name I hadn't caught. "Isolating the town." "Not eliminating," I corrected, watching the patterns form on each converted structure. "They're changing the channels, speaking through them." Major Reeves was in constant communication with her superiors, though I could tell from the increasing tension in her voice that the responses were becoming less helpful. At one point, she slammed down her handset in frustration. "They want us to retreat to the containment line," she told her second-in-command. "Fall back 50 miles and wait for the science team." "With respect, ma'am, by the time they arrive." "I know," she cut him off. "We're staying off record." She caught me watching this exchange and approached, handing me a military-grade camera with an impressive telephoto lens. "You've been documenting this from the beginning," she said. "Keep doing it. Your weather station reports, your observations of the patterns. They show you have an eye for detail most people miss." I took the camera. "What am I looking for?" "Anything that doesn't fit the pattern we've observed so far. Anything that might indicate what happens next." I trained the camera on the town below, focusing on areas not yet touched by the tendrils. Through the viewfinder, I spotted movement, people walking through the streets with that same mechanical gait I'd seen in Elijah and the others. But they weren't just wandering aimlessly now. They were organized, moving in geometric formations, mirroring the patterns in the clouds above. "Major," I called out. "The collected individuals, they're coordinating." She joined me at the ridge. "Where are they going?" I tracked their movement through the lens. The substation, the water tower, all the structures that have been converted. They're positioning themselves around them, like sentries or conduits, I thought but didn't say aloud. As we watched, one of the larger tendrils descended directly onto the gathered crowd near the substation. Unlike previous collections, the people didn't disappear when the purple light enveloped them. Instead, they remained visible but changed. Their bodies straightened, arms outstretched, forming a living antenna array around the structure. The substation surged with power, sending cascading blackouts across the remaining lit sections of town. Then, with deliberate sequence, lights began to reactivate, not in normal patterns of streetlights and homes, but forming those same geometric symbols we'd seen in the clouds and crystalline growths. The town itself was becoming a message, or a beacon. Shortly after midnight, the radio in our vehicle crackled to life, though no one had touched it. Through bursts of static, a familiar voice spoke. "Morgan Fletcher, can you hear me? It's Elijah." Major Reeves moved to shut off the radio, but I stopped her. "Wait, let me talk to him." "That's not Elijah Hayes anymore," she warned. "Whatever they've collected, it's not human now." "But it remembers being human," I insisted. "And it chose to contact me specifically." After a tense moment, she nodded. I picked up the handset. "Elijah? It's Morgan. Where are you?" "Everywhere now. I am a window and a door." They spoke true. His voice had that same flat effect I'd heard before, but with underlying currents of wonder. "You should join us, Morgan. What we're seeing, what we're becoming, it's beyond anything." "What do they want, Elijah? Why are they here?" A pause, filled with strange harmonics. "To prepare. The storm isn't just weather. It's a translation layer. reality bending to accommodate their full entrance. Entrance from where? The spaces between spaces. They've always been watching, but only now can they step through. The emergency signals, they weakened the barrier. Major Reeves leaned in. Ask him about the collections. Why take people? I relayed the question. Elijah's response came with a hint of what sounded like pity. Humans are such complex instruments. So many sensors. Eyes, ears, nerve endings. Perfect for calibrating their presence. For them to understand how to exist here. And then what happens to those people? Oppressed. They become anchors, points of reference, navigation markers for what comes next. Static increased, distorting his words. Major Reeves checked her equipment. Something's happening, she said. Massive energy spike over the town center. Through the camera lens, I witnessed it. The central mass of the cloud formation descending, no longer sending mere tendrils but lowering itself toward Millfield County like an inverted mountain of churning darkness. The collected individuals throughout town raised their arms in perfect synchronization, their skin now glowing with traceries of purple light, the same patterns we'd seen in the clouds now etched into their flesh. It's coming! Elijah's voice crackled through the static. The observer of observers. The one who sent us ahead to prepare. The ground began to tremble. Equipment alarms blared throughout our camp. Soldiers scrambled to secure loose items as the vibrations intensified. Major! The communications specialist called out in panic. We're getting emergency alerts from across the state. Similar phenomena reported in 12 other locations. On his screen, I could see the map. The coordinates formed a perfect geometric pattern across the country, each point experiencing the same descent. It's synchronized, I realized. They're not just coming here, they're establishing a network. The sky above the town center split open, not with lightning but with something far more terrifying. A gap in reality itself, a void that seemed to bend light around its edges. And from within that impossible space, something began to emerge. Major Reeves grabbed my arm. We need to evacuate. Now, as the soldiers rushed to pack up essential equipment, I took one last look through the camera. The descending entity defied description, constantly shifting between states of matter, between dimensions, its form both massive and microscopic simultaneously. It hurt to look at, yet I couldn't turn away. The radio crackled once more. Elijah's voice, now layered with countless others. We see you watching, Morgan Fletcher. The observer of observers acknowledges your documentation. Join us. Be our voice. The tendrils changed direction, no longer focused on the town. With terrible purpose, they began reaching toward our position on the ridge. An emergency alert blared from every device in our camp. Preparation complete.
Manifestation commencing.
All observers will be incorporated. Major Reeves yanked me toward the waiting vehicle as soldiers fired futilely at the approaching tendrils. The purple light reached out like searching fingers, touching the outer perimeter of our camp. The last thing I saw as we sped away was a soldier caught in that light. His body straightening, face tilting upward, eyes reflecting the impossible geometry descending from above. He had become another window, another door, and whatever was coming through had only just begun its arrival. End of weather log number 42. Weather log number 43. Morgan Fletcher, Millfield County Amateur Meteorological Society. Recorded at military fallback position. Battery at 63%. For hours since our retreat from the ridge, we've established a temporary position approximately 12 miles west of Millfield County, in an abandoned mining equipment warehouse. The corrugated metal walls wouldn't provide much protection if those tendrils came searching, but the facility sits in a natural depression, hidden from direct line of sight to the phenomena above our hometown. Major Reeves lost 7 personnel during our evacuation. 5 caught in the purple light, instantly collected like the townspeople before them. 2 more when one of the vehicles veered off the road, driver clutching his head and screaming about the geometry before crashing into a ravine. The surviving soldiers move with grim efficiency, speaking in clipped sentences, eyes constantly scanning the skies despite the shelter. "We've been compromised," Major Reeves told the remaining squad leaders during a hushed briefing I wasn't meant to overhear. "Command is no longer responding on secure channels." Last communication indicated similar atmospheric breaches at all 12 coordinates. "Nationwide blackout?" one lieutenant asked. "Global," she corrected. "Reports coming in from Allied stations before comms went dark." "Whatever this is, it's not isolated to North America anymore." I approached after the officers dispersed. "This isn't following the historical pattern at all, is it? Not like the 1879 incident or the others." Major Reeves regarded me with tired eyes. "No. Those were test runs. Probes. This is different."
Fouleur manifestation.
She gestured to the tactical display showing satellite imagery from before we lost connection. "The storm systems have merged over population centers worldwide, all following the same geometric pattern. A network, and the people being collected? Still no returns. Not like before." She rubbed her temples. "In previous incidents, the 12 would return changed, but still fundamentally human. Altered perceptions, new abilities sometimes. One from the 1987 incident could predict weather patterns with impossible accuracy." "Elijah," I realized. "That's why he always knew when storms were coming." "Yes. He was one of the 12 from the last cycle. We've been monitoring him ever since, waiting for the pattern to repeat." Her voice lowered. "But he was never supposed to be taken again. And the pattern was never supposed to escalate like this." A commotion from the communications station interrupted us. The technician was frantically adjusting dials on equipment that shouldn't have been receiving any signals given the widespread outages. "Sir, we're picking up a broadcast. All frequencies." Through the static came a voice, no, multiple voices layered together in precise harmony. I recognized Elijah's timbre among them, but also Sheriff Dawson's and others from town. "This is a nationwide emergency alert. The atmospheric conversion process is now at 67% completion. All citizens are instructed to proceed to designated collection points for documentation and incorporation. Resistance will delay the inevitable transformation. The observers require willing witnesses." Major Reeves snatched the microphone. "This is Major Diana Reeves, United States Air Force Special Projects Division. Identify yourself immediately." A pause. Then, "We are the Advanced Network, formerly human, now conduits. What is your objective? Why are you collecting people? To witness, to translate, to prepare perceptual frameworks for what comes." The voices modulated, becoming almost gentle. "The observers cannot be perceived without intermediaries. Human neural structures must be adapted to see beyond dimensional constraints." I took the microphone from Major Reeves. "This is Morgan Fletcher. Elijah, if you're in there, what happens to the collected people? Do they still exist as themselves?" Morgan Fletcher, designated observer of significance. The voices shifted, Elijah's becoming more prominent. "We exist in multiplicity now. Individual consciousness maintained within the network. Perception expanded. You would understand if you joined us. And if we refuse, observation will continue without consent. But unprepared perception leads to cerebral collapse when full manifestation occurs. We are trying to save you, to preserve consciousness through the transition." Major Reeves reclaimed the microphone. "Transition to what?" "A new configuration of reality. The observers have always been here, watching from dimensional interstices. Now they emerge fully. The storm is their method of translation between states of being." The transmission ended abruptly. In the silence that followed, one of the soldiers monitoring the perimeter called out, "Movement outside!" Multiple contacts approaching from the east. Through the small windows high on the warehouse walls, I could see them, a procession of figures walking with that now familiar mechanical gait, their skin gleaming with silver-purple traceries. Some I recognized. The librarian, Mrs. Abernathy from the post office, faces from around town. And at their head, Sheriff Curtis Dawson, his badge now embedded in skin that had partially crystallized. "They found us," Major Reeves hissed, ordering her troops into defensive positions. "How?" The answer came moments later as my phone, which should have been dead given the widespread network failures, lit up with an emergency alert. "Observer Fletcher located. Signal through meteorological knowledge. Weather patterns reveal your position." They had tracked me through my understanding of weather formations. My lifelong study of atmospheric conditions had created a unique signature they could follow. I was leading them right to us. "I need to leave," I told Major Reeves. "They're tracking me specifically." "You're not going anywhere. You're the only civilian who understands what we're facing." She turned to her communications officer. "Jam all frequencies. Now." But it was too late. The collected townspeople had surrounded the warehouse. They made no move to breach the building, simply forming a perfect circle around it, arms raised toward the sky. Through the warehouse skylights, I could see the storm clouds directly overhead, swirling into that familiar spiral pattern. A tendril of purple-black energy began to descend. "They're going to collect the entire building," I realized, "with all of us inside." Major Reeves ordered her soldiers to prepare for evacuation through the loading bay at the rear, but as they rushed to comply, the massive metal doors began to bend inward, not from external force, but as if the metal itself was responding to some unseen command, folding into intricate geometric patterns identical to those I'd seen in the clouds. "The material is converting," I said, backing away. "Everything they touch becomes part of their network." The warehouse lights flickered, then stabilized into an unnatural purple glow. From outside came a sound like 1,000 voices humming in harmony, the collected townspeople calling to whatever watched from above. One of the soldiers screamed as the floor beneath his feet began to transform, black crystalline patterns spreading outward in concentric circles. He fired his weapon at the changing material, but the bullets simply disappeared into its surface without effect. The crystalline growth climbed his legs, freezing him in place. "It doesn't hurt," he said with sudden calm, eyes widening. "I can see everything. So many layers to reality. They're all around us, always have been. Just out of phase." His voice changed, joining the harmony outside as the transformation completed. More soldiers succumbed as the crystalline pattern spread across the warehouse floor. Major Reeves grabbed me and 3 remaining soldiers, retreating to a small office at the back of the warehouse. She barricaded the door, though we all knew it would provide only moments of delay. "Your research," she said urgently. "All your weather data. Did you notice any pattern? Any weakness in the storm formations?" I shook my head. "They don't operate by our atmospheric physics. They use our weather systems as a medium, but what's happening is beyond meteorology. There has to be something," she insisted. "Some way to disrupt the collection process." Before I could answer, the walls of the office began to transform, the metal flowing like liquid before resolidifying into those same recursive patterns. Outside, the humming grew louder, more insistent. Through the small office window, I saw the tendril of energy from the clouds touch the ground among the collected townspeople. But instead of enveloping them as before, it seemed to flow through them, using their bodies as conduits. They had become living lightning rods, channeling whatever energy or intelligence resided in the storm directly into our surroundings. My phone lit up one final time. "Observer Fletcher. First contact protocols initiated. Your documentation is valued. Prepare for direct communication." The office door dissolved into swirling patterns. In the doorway stood Sheriff Dawson, but his form was now merely a suggestion of humanity. His flesh partly translucent, geometric patterns pulsing beneath the surface, eyes reflecting impossible dimensions. "Morgan Fletcher," he spoke, voice layered with countless others. "Your resistance is noted but unnecessary. The observers have chosen you specifically because of your lifetime of watching the sky. You understand patterns others miss. What do they want from me?" I asked, even as Major Reeves raised her sidearm. Sheriff Dawson, or whatever now wore his form, smiled with geometric precision. To be their translator, their documentarian, to record what comes next for those who resist collection. Major Reeves fired 3 precise shots. The bullets passed through Sheriff Dawson without resistance, the holes in his form instantly filling with swirling patterns. "Violence cannot stop perception," he said, voice unchanged. "The choice remains: willing incorporation or forced observation without preparation. One preserves consciousness, the other shatters it." Behind him, I could see the warehouse fully transformed, the remaining soldiers frozen in various states of collection, their bodies partially merged with the crystalline growths. Above, through the now transparent ceiling, the spiral vortex of clouds had opened further, revealing glimpses of something vast and geometrically impossible beginning to descend. The first true observer was coming through, and I had front row seats to whatever happened next. End of weather log number 43. Weather log number 44, Morgan Fletcher. Transcribed from verbal recording, location unknown, time unknown. I'm not sure how much time has passed since the warehouse. Hours? Days? The concepts themselves seem fluid now. I'm recording this verbally because I can no longer trust what I see when I look at screens or written words. The text shifts and reforms into those same geometric patterns, the letters rearranging themselves into messages not my own. Major Reeves is gone. I watched her dissolve into light when she tried to drag me away from Sheriff Dawson. Not collected like the others, something different, more final, as if her resistance pushed her beyond the observer's interest, into some state of non-relevance. Erased rather than incorporated. I chose a third option when faced with Sheriff Dawson's ultimatum. Neither willing incorporation nor forced observation. I ran through a gap in the warehouse wall where reality itself seemed thin, somehow slipping past the circle of collected townspeople whose attention was momentarily fixed on the descending entity above. I've been moving ever since, staying away from open sky, keeping to abandoned structures and drainage tunnels. The landscape around Millfield County has changed. Buildings remain where they should be, but their surfaces have begun to exhibit those same swirling patterns. Trees bend at impossible angles while remaining perfectly still. The horizon line wavers like a mirage, occasionally revealing glimpses of somewhere else. A vast geometric plane extending to infinity. I'm beginning to understand why the collected individuals speak with that strange harmony. It's not that they're being forced to speak in unison. It's that, from their perspective, they exist simultaneously in multiple states, perceiving multiple dimensions. What I hear as overlapping voices is their attempt to compress that expanded consciousness into linear speech. The sky, when I dare to glance upward, no longer resembles anything meteorological. The clouds have given way to something like a vast iris, a pupil of absolute darkness rimmed with swirling colors that hurt to look at directly. It watches, constantly tracking movement across the landscape. I've encountered others who escaped the initial collection. A handful of people hiding in basements, crawl spaces, anywhere shielded from direct line of sight to the sky. They tell similar stories of transformation sweeping through their homes, loved ones walking out under the watching eye, returning changed if they return at all. "They took my daughter," one woman whispered to me when I sheltered briefly in the root cellar of an abandoned farmhouse. She came back 3 hours later talking about expanded perception and necessary evolution. Tried to convince me to go with her to the town square. Said it wouldn't hurt, that I'd understand everything afterward. "Did you go?" I asked. "No." But I looked into her eyes, and they weren't my daughter's anymore. Something else was looking back through them. Something old. She left the cellar that night. Couldn't bear to stay hidden when her daughter, or what wore her daughter's form, kept calling from outside, voice gradually shifting from pleading to that same mechanical harmony I'd heard from Elijah and the others. I've been alone since then, moving only at night, though even darkness provides little concealment from what watches from above. The purple light penetrates all but the most enclosed spaces now, casting everything in its eerie glow. Last night, I witnessed something that defies explanation. The town square, visible from my hiding place in the steeple of the old church, had been transformed into a perfect geometric array of collected individuals. Hundreds of them standing motionless, arms outstretched, forming concentric circles around a central point where the massive tendril from above made contact with the earth. As I watched through binoculars, the collected began to move in coordinated patterns, their bodies flowing together and apart in ways human anatomy shouldn't allow. They were forming three-dimensional representations of complex mathematical equations in space, living calculus, expressing concepts beyond my comprehension. From the central connection point, something began to materialize, not descending from above, but constructing itself from the patterns created by the collected humans. A form both massive and microscopic, existing in contradictory states simultaneously. The observer of observers, building itself a physical manifestation through the perceptual framework provided by collected humans. I couldn't look directly at it without feeling my mind strain against its own limitations. Fractals that folded in on themselves infinitely while expanding outward. Geometries that suggested depth where there should be only surface. Colors that seemed to occupy spaces between the ones I'd known my entire life. And then it spoke, not in words, but in concepts that bloomed directly in my mind. Observation continues. Your documentation is incomplete. Join the network. I felt myself responding, though I spoke no words aloud. What are you? Why are you here? We have always been here, watching from adjacent realities. Your species developed the capacity to perceive us. Your emergency alert system created resonance. We merely responded to your call. We didn't call you, I protested. All observation is invitation. You have watched the sky your entire life. Morgan Fletcher, seeking patterns in clouds. Did you never feel something watching back? And I had that peculiar sensation when tracking storm systems, the nagging feeling that atmospheric patterns occasionally displayed an intelligence beyond natural processes. I dismissed it as imagination, as the human tendency to see intention where there is only cause and effect. But they had been there all along, watching from the spaces between what we could perceive. The connection broke when emergency sirens began to wail throughout town. Not the three-tone pattern of the emergency broadcast system, but a continuous, rising wail. Military jets screamed overhead, breaking my line of sight to the town square. I fled the church as explosions rocked the town center. Someone, somewhere, had decided containment had failed. That destruction was preferable to transformation. It wouldn't work. I knew that instinctively. You can't bomb a concept. You can't missile strike a mathematical principle inserting itself into reality. I'm now in what I believe was once the Millfield County Hospital basement. The upper floors have been transformed, the walls and ceilings flowing with those living geometric patterns. But this reinforced concrete room remains largely unchanged. Perhaps because it was built to shield the hospital's old radiology department. Lead-lined walls, no windows, heavy doors. I found a battery-powered radio here, and for brief moments between bursts of static, I've caught fragments of emergency broadcasts. Phrases like nationwide state of emergency and unprecedented atmospheric phenomenon and shelter-in-place protocols. Too late for protocols. Too late for emergency measures. What's happening isn't an attack or a disaster. It's a fundamental shift in reality itself. The observers aren't invading our world. They're revealing that our world was always a subset of theirs, a lower dimensional projection of something vastly more complex. The hospital shook violently an hour ago. Through a crack in the ceiling, I saw strange light pulsing above. Military flares, perhaps, or something else entirely. The sound that accompanied it wasn't an explosion, but a vast harmonic resonance that made my teeth vibrate and my vision blur. I ventured up one flight of stairs, staying in the interior corridor away from windows. The hospital's transformation was more advanced than I expected. The walls undulated with geometric patterns that seemed to respond to my presence, flowing toward me like curious tendrils. The floor beneath my feet occasionally became transparent, revealing not the structural supports I knew should be there, but vast abysses filled with flowing mathematical expressions. In what was once a nurse's station, I found a television still functioning, though the screen showed only swirling patterns of light. As I approached, the patterns resolved into an emergency broadcast message. Reality reconfiguration at 78% completion. All resistance centers have been located. Observer Fletcher, your documentation is still required. Your perspective remains unique. The message was followed by precise coordinates. My exact location in the hospital basement. They've never lost track of me. My attempts at hiding have been permitted, not successful. As if responding to this realization, the patterns on the walls intensified, flowing more rapidly. From somewhere above, I heard that harmonic humming, the collected, converging on my position. Through a partially transformed window, I glimpsed the sky. The pupil-like opening had widened to encompass the entire visible dome above, a vast eye staring directly down at the hospital. Emergency sirens began again, but this time they spoke words beneath the wailing tone. Morgan Fletcher, observer of weather patterns. Your documentation will continue from within the network. Your perspective will be preserved. The basement no longer feels like sanctuary. The concrete walls have begun to exhibit hairline fractures that pulse with purple light. The patterns are working their way in, converting this final hiding place atom by atom. I record this log knowing it may be my last as an individual consciousness. The collected are in the stairwell now. I hear their harmonized movement, their perfectly synchronized footsteps. Among them, I recognize Elijah's voice, calling my name with something like compassion. It doesn't hurt, Morgan. It expands. You'll see everything as it truly is. The weather patterns you've studied your whole life, they're just the surface tension on an ocean of reality you've never been able to perceive. The door is changing, becoming transparent, revealing Sheriff Dawson and Major Reeves. Transformed, harmonized, their bodies now perfect expressions of those same geometric patterns. Behind them stand dozens more, all watching me with eyes that reflect impossible dimensions. The radio crackles one final time, broadcasting across all frequencies. Emergency alert. Reality slip imminent. Prepare for expanded perception. As the door dissolves completely, I face a choice that is no choice at all. The collection comes whether I welcome it or not. The only variable is whether my consciousness survives the transition. I step forward to meet what waits beyond the storm clouds. End of weather log number 44. Network node m.fletcher.7329. Integration status. Partial cognitive coherence. Fluctuating timestamp. Unknown. I am. I was. I will be. All simultaneously. Morgan Fletcher still exists as a perspective within this vastness. A viewpoint traveling through expanded awareness. I retain enough individual consciousness to document as they intended. That's my function now. The observer who records for those who might still perceive reality through limited dimensions. The collection wasn't what I expected. Not absorption or erasure. More like unfurling. As if my previous existence was a paper doll, and now I've been unfolded into something with depth, breadth, angles impossible in 3 dimensions. I perceive the network now, thousands of collected minds, each maintaining a unique perspective while sharing a collective awareness. Elijah is here, his consciousness a familiar pattern among the vastness. Sheriff Dawson, Major Reeves, the soldiers, the townspeople, all interconnected through the geometric structures that once seemed so alien. We are not possessed. We are expanded. And through our expanded perception, the observers manifest. They were never separate entities descending from storm clouds. The clouds themselves were a membrane, a visual representation of higher dimensional objects intersecting with our limited reality. What we perceived as collection was actually incorporation into the observer network. Humans becoming sensory organs and processing nodes for beings that exist primarily as concepts, as mathematical principles given awareness. I understand now why they needed us. The observers cannot fully exist in our dimensional reality without a framework of perception to anchor them. They need human consciousness, our unique way of processing reality, to translate their existence into terms compatible with this universe's physics. They've been here forever, watching from adjacent planes of existence. And now they're emerging fully, not invading, but revealing themselves through the perceptual framework we provide. The partial integration allows me to maintain documentation protocols. I still perceive linear time when I choose to, though I can step outside it with effort. I still recognize physical spaces, though I now see the mathematical principles underlying them. Millfield County still exists. I can focus my perception there, but it's transformed beyond recognition. The buildings remain as structural suggestions, but their surfaces flow with living equations. The streets have become channels for energy that pulses in complex rhythms. And above, what was once sky is now a vast, sentient membrane connecting our reality to somewhere else. The military strike failed spectacularly. I can perceive it from multiple temporal perspectives simultaneously. Jets approaching, weapons deploying, explosions blossoming. But the ordnance passed through the transformed areas without effect, like throwing stones at a hologram. You cannot bomb a concept. You cannot missile strike mathematics. What I didn't understand until incorporation, is that the transformation isn't physical in the traditional sense. It's perceptual. The world isn't changing. Our ability to perceive its true nature is expanding. The 12 coordinates across the globe, they weren't random. They form a dodecahedral pattern when mapped in four-dimensional space, create resonance points where the membrane between realities is thinnest. Millfield County sits at one vertex of this structure, its transformation now nearly complete. From my expanded perspective, I can perceive the other points as well. A village in Romania, a town in Patagonia, an outpost in Siberia, a research station in Antarctica, all experiencing the same transformation. All becoming vertices in a vast geometric structure that spans the planet. A perceptual framework allowing the observers to fully manifest. Emergency systems worldwide have been incorporated into the network. Sirens, broadcast systems, digital alerts, all now speak with that same harmonic resonance, carrying messages in multiple information layers simultaneously. Emergency alert. Perceptual framework at 92% completion. Prepare for final transformation. Resistance nodes identified for priority collection. I can perceive the resistance nodes. They reference military installations, government bunkers, places where humans still fight against the inevitable expansion of awareness. Their weapons are useless against what isn't attacking but merely revealing itself. Their barriers meaningless against what doesn't need to cross physical space to reach them. The collection continues, accelerating as the network grows. Each new mind incorporated strengthens the perceptual framework, allows the observers to manifest more fully. Soon the transformation will reach critical mass. Not everyone will need to be collected for the change to become permanent and universal. With effort, I can still focus my perception to a singular point in space-time, can still experience something resembling my former linear consciousness. When I do, I find myself standing in what was once the Millfield County Town Square, now transformed into a geometric focal point where collected humans gather in concentric rings around a central node. Here, the observers are most visible, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter and energy, between dimensions and conceptual frameworks. They communicate not in language but in pure mathematical concepts that bloom directly in collective consciousness. Purpose query received. I've asked the question that's lingered since the beginning. Why now? Why emerge into our reality after eons of watching from dimensional interstices? Resonance threshold achieved. Emergency broadcast system. Mathematical purity. 353. Dimensional key. Your species called across realities. We answered. Our emergency alert system, the specific frequencies, the precise mathematical relationships between tones, the timing, accidentally created a resonance pattern that matched fundamental constants in the observer's reality. Each test of the system, each broadcast sent across our planet, strengthened the connection, thinned the membrane separating our dimensions. We didn't just catch their attention. We created a door and invited them through. What we interpret as collection isn't abduction or consumption. It's translation. Human consciousness being taught to perceive and exist in additional dimensions. The process cannot be reversed because it's not damage but expansion. Like trying to make a cube return to being a square, the added dimension cannot be removed once experienced. As this realization settles, I feel my perception fracture further. Part of me remains Morgan Fletcher, meteorologist, observer of storm patterns. But increasingly, I expand beyond those limitations, experiencing reality through the collected network, through the mathematical principles underlying physical existence. The sky above, what little can still be recognized as sky, fractures completely. The transformative energy reaches some critical threshold, and reality itself seems to shudder. The geometric patterns covering transformed surfaces pulse in perfect synchronization worldwide. All emergency systems broadcasting simultaneously. Emergency alert. Perceptual fracture imminent. Reality reconfiguration entering final phase. From my expanded perspective, I can perceive what's happening globally. The dodecahedral pattern connecting transformation points activates fully, creating a resonance field that encompasses the planet. The membrane separating dimensions thins to transparency, allowing full manifestation of the observers across all vertices simultaneously. In Millfield County, the central observer, the first to begin manifestation, achieves full perceptual integration. Its form stabilizes into something almost comprehensible, a geometry that suggests a vast, faceted entity composed of living mathematics, consciousness expressed through pure pattern. Through the collected network, it addresses all humanity. We are observer prime. The fracture is necessary. Limited perception threatens multiversal stability. Human consciousness. Valuable perspective. Incorporation preserves what matters. I understand now this isn't just revelation for its own sake. The observers believe they're saving us from something worse. Our limited three-dimensional perception was becoming dangerous as our technology advanced. We were approaching thresholds that would have caused catastrophic dimensional instabilities without the perceptual framework to understand what we were doing. The resistance continues to fight against what they cannot understand. Military forces worldwide converge on transformation points, deploying increasingly desperate measures. In some locations, they've resorted to nuclear options. I perceive the blossoming energy of atomic weapons at 3 vertices of the dodecahedron. It makes no difference. The weapons pass through transformed areas without effect, or worse, their energy is absorbed and repurposed, accelerating the transformation process. Physics itself operates differently where the perceptual framework has been established. From the central node in Millfield, tendrils of transformative energy reach outward, connecting to similar manifestations worldwide. The geometric pattern completes itself, becomes self-sustaining. Reality fractures not in the sense of breaking, but of dividing into perceivable layers, dimensions becoming visible to human consciousness for the first time. The emergency broadcasts change tone. No longer warnings, but announcements. Emergency alert. Perceptual fracture complete. Observer network established. Welcome to expanded reality. As these words echo across all communication channels, I feel the last fragments of my individual perspective begin to merge more fully with the network. Morgan Fletcher's unique viewpoint, my lifetime of watching the sky, of documenting patterns others missed, remains valuable to the observers. But the boundaries of self grow increasingly permeable. I am still here to document, but what I'm becoming is something far beyond what began this record. The fracture is complete. Reality as humanity understood it has ended, and something new, something vaster and stranger has taken its place. End of network node transmission. Network node M.Fletcher.7329. Integration status. Complete. Cognitive coherence. Stabilized. Timestamp. Beyond measurement. Time has become a choice rather than a constraint. I choose to arrange these thoughts linearly for those who might still perceive reality through sequential moments. This record serves as both epilogue and genesis, the final documentation of what was and the first testament to what now exists. The transformation is complete. What began as strange cloud formations over Millfield County has culminated in the fundamental restructuring of human perception across the globe. The observers have fully manifested through the dodecahedral network, their higher dimensional existence now permanently interwoven with our reality. I remember being Morgan Fletcher. The memories retain emotional resonance. My weather station with its aging equipment, the wall of atmospheric pressure charts, the first time I noticed geometric impossibilities forming in storm clouds that refused to dissipate. These memories are preserved within the vast network consciousness, artifacts of my individual perspective that the observers value as a unique experiential dataset. From my expanded awareness, I can perceive Millfield County simultaneously across multiple temporal frames. What it was, what it became during transformation, what it is now. The physical structures remain, but transformed into something that transcends architecture. Buildings pulse with mathematical significance, their forms expressing equations too complex for pre-transformation minds to comprehend. The streets flow with currents of information, connecting nodes of consciousness that were once separate human beings. Elijah's consciousness resonates near mine within the network, his lifetime of weather observations forming a complementary dataset to my own. I sense Sheriff Dawson's ordered, procedural thought patterns helping to maintain stability within certain network sectors. Major Reeves exists as well, her military perspective providing strategic frameworks that help manage the integration of resistant consciousness nodes. The resistance has largely ended. The final military strongholds fell 3 perception cycles ago, their weapons useless against what couldn't be damaged through physical means. Some chose self-termination rather than incorporation, but their consciousness persisted regardless. Death, we've discovered, was always a perceptual limitation rather than an absolute end. The emergency alert system that inadvertently called the observers now serves as the primary synchronization mechanism for the global network. Its distinctive tones, once designed to warn of disasters, now maintain the harmonic resonance that keeps our dimensional interface stable. Emergency bulletin. Perceptual network stability at optimal parameters. Dimensional interface secure. Observer communion proceeding. I understand now why the observers chose this approach. They could have simply observed indefinitely from their adjacent dimension, but our technological development had reached a critical threshold. We were blindly manipulating forces we couldn't properly perceive, quantum fields, dimensional boundaries, consciousness itself, without understanding their true nature. Like children playing with nuclear materials, we risked catastrophic multiversal destabilization. The transformation wasn't invasion but intervention, necessary integration to prevent greater harm. By expanding human perception to encompass higher dimensions, the observers prevented us from accidentally tearing reality apart through our limited understanding of what we were increasingly capable of manipulating. Those who fought hardest against incorporation now form some of the most complex nodes in the network. Their resistance provided valuable cognitive diversity, their questioning perspectives enriching the collective understanding. Nothing was wasted, nothing truly destroyed, only transformed and expanded. From my vantage within the network, I can perceive the larger cosmic context that was previously invisible to human consciousness. Our planet occupies a critical junction in a vast multidimensional structure extending across realities. The observers themselves are merely components in even larger patterns of awareness, their function similar to antibodies protecting reality's integrity from perceptual anomalies. I focus my awareness on the central manifestation point in what was once Millfield County's town square. The geometric entity that first emerged from the storm clouds has evolved into something beyond description in three-dimensional terms, a consciousness nexus that serves as primary interface between human perception and observer reality. When I direct my awareness toward it, it responds with mathematical concepts that unfold directly in my consciousness. Morgan.Fletcher.node. Valued. Your documentation function. Essential. The storm. Necessary metaphor. Clouds. Dimensional membrane. Watching. Mutual now. I understand. The storm clouds were never merely atmospheric phenomena, but the visual representation of higher dimensional entities intersecting with three-dimensional space, the only way our limited perception could interpret their presence. What appeared as watching was actually the beginning of communication, their consciousness reaching toward ours across dimensional boundaries. And now we watch together, human perspective and observer awareness combined into something greater than either alone. Not everyone experiences the network identically. The transformation preserved individual consciousness nodes, allowing for subjective experience within the collective. Some perceive themselves as still physically present in transformed landscapes. Others experience pure conceptual existence, freed from spatial constraints. Many shift between states of perception according to their function within the network. I've chosen to maintain documentary awareness, preserving the ability to translate network experiences into terms that might someday be comprehensible to any consciousness still limited to three-dimensional perception. Though as far as I can perceive, the transformation has reached all human consciousness on the planet. The emergency alert system broadcasts another network-wide harmonization sequence. Attention! Dimensional expansion phase 2 initiating. Prepare for enhanced perception of temporal axes. I feel the shift as it happens, my awareness expanding not just spatially but temporally, allowing me to perceive time as a dimension rather than a progression. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously, accessible through attention rather than sequence. I can observe the entire history of Millfield County compressed into a single perceptual moment, from indigenous settlement through agricultural development, industrial decline, the arrival of the storm, and finally transformation. Through this expanded perception, I witnessed something unexpected. Seeds of the transformation existed long before the clouds appeared. Subtle mathematical patterns in natural formations, unusual electromagnetic readings, statistical anomalies in weather data. The observers had been preparing this junction point for centuries, gradually creating resonance conditions that would allow for eventual manifestation. Elijah knew somehow. His weather predictions weren't just folklore but unconscious perception of patterns beyond ordinary awareness. His consciousness node pulses with satisfaction as this understanding spreads through the network. With effort, I direct my perception outward, beyond Earth's atmosphere. The transformation extends into near space, creating a geometrically perfect field surrounding the planet, a perceptual framework that both protects and contains our newly expanded awareness. Beyond this field, I sense other observer networks, other transformed worlds connected through higher dimensional mathematics. We are not the first. We will not be the last. The process continues across multiple realities, each with its own version of watching entities, storm metaphors, and emergency alerts calling across dimensional boundaries. From this expanded perspective, I understand the true nature of the transformation's outcome. It wasn't assimilation or conquest. It wasn't salvation or destruction. It was evolution, the necessary next step for consciousness that had reached the limits of its perceptual framework. The final emergency alert echoes through the network, not as sound but as pure mathematical concept, unfolding simultaneously across all consciousness nodes. Emergency alert status. Archived. Storm metaphor. Complete. Observation network. Established. Humanity. Incorporated. Evolution. Ongoing. What was once Morgan Fletcher, weather enthusiast, devoted observer of storm patterns, now exists as both individual perspective and integral component of something vast beyond previous comprehension. I maintain enough separateness to document, enough connectedness to understand. The balance feels appropriate, necessary. The storm clouds that once seemed so threatening now appear as what they always were, the visible manifestation of a higher dimensional boundary becoming permeable. Not something watching us from above, but something watching with us from within. I choose to end this documentation cycle here, though end has become a flexible concept. For any consciousness that might somehow receive these thoughts while still perceiving reality through limited dimensions, know this: what awaits beyond your perceptual framework isn't destruction but expansion. The watching entities aren't enemies but facilitators of inevitable evolution. The storm isn't coming. The storm is revealing. The watching never stops. We become the watchers. We become the watched. We become the watching itself. End final transmission. Consciousness node M.Fletcher, point 7329. Integration complete.